Knowledge is, in some ways, the most important, though intangible capital of a software engineering organization, and sharing of that knowledge is crucial for making an organization resilient and redundant in the face of change. A culture that promotes open and honest knowledge sharing distributes that knowledge efficiently across the organization and allows that organization to scale over time, and in most cases investments into easier knowledge sharing reap manifold dividends over the life of a company. Programming is the immediate act of producing code. Software engineering is a set of policies, practices, and tools that are necessary to make that code useful for as long as it needs to be used, and allowing collaboration across the team. This is what good management is about: 95% observation and listening, and 5% making critical adjustments in just the right place. Traditional managers worry about how to get things done, whereas great managers worry about what things get done and trust their team to figure out how to do it. The moral is this: do not underestimate the power of playing a social game. It's not about tricking or manipulating people. It's about creating relationships to get things done. Relationships always outlast projects. And when you've got richer in relationships with your co-workers, they'll be more willing to go the extra mile when you need them. Now, stagnation isn't an option, but often a wise one. Stagnation is an option, but often not a wise one. Stagnation is an option, but often not a wise one. Nothing is built on stone. All is built on sand, but we must build as if the sand or stone. Well, nothing is built on stone. All is built on sand. Nothing is built on stone. All is built on sand. Nothing is built on stone. All is built on sand. Nothing is built on stone. All is built on sand. Nothing is built on stone. All is built on sand. Nothing is built on stone. There you go. Still, other teams give out noise and canceling headphones to engineers to make it easier to deal with background noise. In fact, in many companies are very active wearing headphones is a common signal. That means don't disturb me unless it's really important. We think the middle ground is really the best solution. Group terms of 4 to 8 people together in small rooms or large offices to make it easy and not embarrassing for spontaneous conversation to happen. Programming is hard. Software engineering is even harder. In any new situation, whether it involves an elevator or a rocket ship, it will almost certainly be viewed in one of 3 ways: as a -1, actively harmful, someone who creates problems, whereas a 0, your impact is neutral and doesn't tip the balance one way or the other, or you'll be seen as a +1, someone who actively adds value. Everyone wants to be a +1, of course, but proclaiming your +1-ness as at the outset almost guarantees you'll be perceived as a -1, regardless of the skills you bring to the table or how you actually perform. Early success is a terrible teacher. You're essentially being rewarded for a lack of preparation. So when you find yourself in a situation where you must prepare, you can do it. You don't know how. In any new situation, whether it involves an elevator or a rocket ship, it will almost certainly be viewed in one of 3 ways: as a -1, actively harmful, someone who creates problems, whereas a 0, the impact is neutral and doesn't tip the balance one way or the other, or you'll be seen as a +1, someone who actively adds value. Everyone wants to be a +1, of course, but proclaiming your +1-ness as at the outset almost guarantees you'll be perceived as a -1, regardless of the skills you bring to the table or how you actually perform. Early success is a terrible teacher. You're essentially being rewarded for a lack of preparation. So when you find yourself in a situation where you must prepare, you can do it. You don't know how. Without letting, don't sweat the small stuff without letting anyone see you sweat. In my experience, fear comes from not knowing what to expect and not feeling you have any control over what's about to happen. When you feel helpless, you're far more afraid than you would be if you knew the facts. Anticipating problems and figuring out how to solve them is actually the opposite of worrying. It's productive. I wasn't destined to be an astronaut. I had to turn myself into one. In space flight, attitude refers to orientation, which direction for your vehicle is pointing relative to the sun, Earth, and other spacecraft. If you lose control of your attitude, 2 things will happen. The vehicle starts to tumble and spin disoriented everyone on board, and it also strays from its course, which, if you're short on time or fuel, it could mean the difference between life and death. Without letting see you sweat, without letting see see you sweating. Without letting, see you sweating. Without letting, see you sweating. Time is an illusion. It is a strange thing, but when you are dreading something and would give anything to slow down time, it has a disobliging habit of speeding up. A mirror should think longer before they reflect. Mirrors should think longer before they reflect. To know our true essence, we need to leave all of the energy of flow vibrations out of our consciousness. We must withdraw all of our life force from that realm because it is a parasitic. It has little life force of its own. It cannot exist unless we give it life through our attention, imagination, and emotions. The baby will talk when he talks, relax. It ain't like he knows the cure for cancer and just ain't spitting it out. If life is going to exist in a universe of this size, then the one thing it cannot afford to have is a sense of proportion. Time felt slower when we do nothing but wait. Never look directly at the sun. Instead, look at the sunflower. The space-time tells matter how to move. Matter tells space-time how to curve. But Einstein came along and took space and time out of the realm of stationary things and put them in the realm of relativity, given the onlooker dominion over time and space, because time and space are modes by which we think and not conditions in which we live. A man's suffering is similar to the behavior of gas. With a certain quantity of gas is pumped into an empty chamber, it will fill the chamber completely and evenly, no matter how big the chamber. But suffering completely fills the human soul and conscious mind, no matter whether the suffering is great or little. Therefore, the size of human suffering is absolutely relative. The moment seemed endless, but it was probably only half that. Philosophers play with the word like a child with a doll. It does not mean that everything in life is relative. A relativist is an individual who doesn't know the difference between an objective and an adverb. Einstein has a feeling for the sexual order of things. He can detect it in the simplicity of natural laws. We may take it that he felt this simplicity very strongly and directly during this discovery of the theory of relativity. Without engendering more death in a life, so does the eye of heaven itself become an evil eye, and incapable or assorted hands are interposed between it and the thing it looks upon lust. Fourth industrial revolution. We haven't yet recovered from the disparities produced by the first, second, and third industrial revolutions. Morons keep peddling holding pompous dreams devoid of humanity, and morons keep consuming them like good little backboneless vermin. Grow a backbone already. You always look at the glorious aspects of industrialization and overlook all those countless lives that are ruined by it. But it's okay as long as we are not struck by catastrophe ourselves. Our sleep of morality never breaks so long as our comfort is unchallenged and enhanced. Rather, it's okay. Millions keep failing, falling through the cracks so long as you can afford a smartphone that runs smooth like butter. It doesn't matter if it is produced by modern-day slave laborers who can't even afford the basic essentials of living, with all the revenue of the tech companies earned by charging $1,000 for a $100 smartphone. They can't even pay decent wages to the people working their butt off to manufacture their assets, because apparently it is more important for the people at the top to afford private jets and trips to space, and then the factory workers to afford healthcare, housing, and a couple of spare meals a day. And this you call industrialization. Well done. You just figured out the secret to worry about being bothered by something so boring as basic humanity. I say you here and now. Listen well. Stop abusing revolutionary and scientific discoveries in the making of a cold, mechanistic, and disparity-infested world. Use science and technology to wipe out the disparities, not cause them break free from your modern savagery. but just in proportion at this process of extermination has acted on an enormous scale, so must the number of intermediate varieties which have formerly existed by truly enormous. Why then is not every geological formation and every stratum full of such intermediate links? Geology assuredly does not reveal any such finely graduated organic chain, and this perhaps is the most obvious and serious objection which can be urged against the theory. The explanation lies, as I believe, in the extreme imperfection of the geological record of a carpenter's daughter has won a name for herself and deserved to win it. I know fossil is buried with its birth certificate. That and the scarcity of fossils means that it is effectively impossible to link fossils into chains of cause and effect in any valid way. To take a line of fossils and claim that they represent a lineage, it's not a scientific hypothesis that can be tested by an assertion that carries the same validity as a bedtime story, amusing, perhaps even instructive, but not scientific. The idea that one can go to the fossil record and expect to empirically recover an ancestor decadence sequence, be it species, genera, families, or whatever, has been and continues to be a permicuous illusion. The phrase fossil record sounds impressive and authoritative, as used by some persons. It becomes as intended to be taken on or esoteric truth as expounded by an elite class of specialists. But what is it really? This fossil record only data in search of interpretation of claims to be to the contrary that I know, and I know of several are so much superstition. The worse the country, the more tortured is by water and wind. The more broken and carved, the more it attracts fossil hunters who depend on the plan to open itself to us. We can only scratch away at what natural forces have brought to the surface. Fossils do not require long ages to form. In fact, they form quickly. They must form quickly, otherwise the organism's softer tissues and even bones suffer decay. Shell. Perfection belongs to narrated events. Perfection belongs to narrated events, not to those we live. The self belongs to a brain, and it is a brain, the brain of me, who is spitting, speaking, writing, and the selling question, and within it, the atom in question was in charge of my writing, and a gigantic menu game, which nobody has yet described. It is that which, at this instant, issuing out of labyrinth find a tangle of yeses and nos, that makes my hand run along a certain path on the paper marked with these values and that are signs of double snap up and down between two levels of energy guides this hand of mine to press on the paper. This dot here, this one, our ignorance allowed us to live as you are in the mountains and your rope is afraid and about to break, but you don't know it and feel safe. If it is true that there is no greater sorrow than to remember a happy time in a state of misery, it is just as true that calling up a moment of anguish in a tranquil mood when seated quietly at one's desk is a source of profound satisfaction. We are not dissatisfied with our choices and with that what life has given us, but when we meet, we both have a curious and not unpleasant impression that a veil, a breath, a throw of the dice deflected us onto two divergent paths which are not ours. Better not to do, than to do, better to meditate than to act. Better his astrophysics, the threshold of the unknowable, than my chemistry of mass. Let's get to know each other. My name's William Moore. They can call me Willie. I'm an engineer chemist who graduated from MIT. So, but you're all like to me. Of course, you would be your robots, and all your names are that sort of code technical numbers. I need some marker where I can take you out. To you out. I'm calling William. I'm for a moment. Gumball, yes, Gumball, do you mind? Poster actually didn't see. SE/TR/037. Agreeing with this and giving me and then we're down, Willie said. We're down, Willie said. I'll cough in the second robot looked up. but sir, Darwin confirmed it's finally the lawn, and you're like Larry, do you know that? I'm more addressed than next robot in mine, yes. Sir, just now I learned that the third robot said accepted its time, its name as well, accepted its name as well. The fuck is this shit? It says, okay, bloody believe this shit is bloody. I say, this is absolutely ridiculous, I need to piss the fuck off. Someone really should do something about this. Why I don't need a bloody do something about it. Why don't bloody do something about it? Yeah, why don't we, I say, what are we buying? Whatever prick is in charge and give that fucker a piece of our mind. Look again at that dot. 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 That's here, that's home, that's us. On everyone you love, everyone you know, everyone you have ever heard of, every human being who has ever lived out their lives, the aggregate of our joy and suffer thousands of confident religions, ideologies and economic doctrines, every hunter and forager, every hero and coward, every creator and destroyer of civilization, every king and peasant, every young couple in love, every mother and father, hopeful child, inventor and explorer, every teacher of morals, every corrupt politician, every superstar, every supreme leader, every saint and sinner lives there on a mote of dust, suspended in a sun's beam. The earth is a very small stage in a vast cosmic arena. Think of the endless cruelties visited by the inhabitants of one corner of this pixel on the scarcely distinguishable inhabitants of some other corner. How frequent their misunderstandings, how eager they are to kill one another, how fervent their hatreds. Think of the rivers of blood spilled by all those generals and emperors, so that in glory and triumph they could become the momentary masters of fraction of the dot. Our posturings, our imagining self-informed illusion that we have in some privileged position in the universe are challenged by this point of pale light. Our planet is a lonely speck in the great enveloping cosmic dark in our obscurity, and all of this vastness. There's no hint that help will come from elsewhere to save us from ourselves. Earth is the only world known so far to harbor. So far to harbor life. There is nowhere else, at least in the near future. So to which hour a species could migrate, is it yes settled? Not like it or not alone. The earth is where we make our standing. The earth is where we make our standing. It has been said that astronomy is a humbling character-building experience. There's perhaps a better demonstration of a folly of human conceits. And then this distant image of our tiny underscores our responsibility to deal more carefully with one of them relating to preserve the one I share to tell you that the clear straight into the universe is fruit of forests, wildernesses, of forests. Look again at that dot. 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 While meditating, we are cleaning up clutter in the backyard of our mind, triggering a shift in our thinking, and reshaping and draining logic in our mental network, giving voice to fresh concepts and new emotions. A leaf cannot return to the bud, a blue star to fire heart, and great stripe. I think it's important to reason from first principles rather than by analogy. The normal way we conduct our lives is we reason by analogy. With analogy, we are doing this because it's like something else that was done, or it's like what other people are doing with first principles. We boil things down to the most fundamental truths, and then reason on from there. When people attempt to rebel against the ironic lack of nature, they come into account with the very same principles which they owe their existence as human beings. Their actions against nature must lead to their own downfall. If chess has any relationship to filmmaking, it would be in the way it helps to develop patience and discipline and choose between alternatives at a time when an impulsive decision seems very attractive. What truly is logic? Besides reason, it is only in the mysterious equations of love that any logic or reason can be found. Logic and the art of thinking and reason in strict coordinates
accordance with the limitations and capacities of the humanist understanding. The basic of logic is a syllogism consisting of a major and a minor premise and a conclusion. Thus, major premise: 60 men can do a piece of work 60 times as quickly as one man. The minor premise: one man can dig a post hole in 60 seconds. Therefore, conclusion: 60 men can dig a post hole in 1 second. This may be called syllogism arithmetical, in which by combining logical mathematics we obtain a double certainty and are twice blessed. He had a better mind and a more rigorous temperament and than me. He thought logically and then acted on the conclusion of logical thought, whereas most of us, I suspect, to the opposite, make an instinctive decision and build up infrastructure of reason into just infrastructure of reason into justify and call the result common sense. The decay of logic results from an untroubled assumption that the particular is real and the universal is not. We can't avoid reason, we can only avoid doing it well. Why kill 2 birds with 1 stone? He always said when you could kill 12. When a man in a forest thinks he is going forward in a straight line, and in reality he is going in a circle. I did my best to go in a circle, hoping to go in a straight line. Arguments cannot be answered by personal abuse. She is just one of the plethora of women you rotate through your bed. Lily looked scared out of her mind as a queen changed direction and stalked her. I will not allow you to besmirch the Eska name and with your filthy plot to steal the prince. I'm so proud of you. I could first, but am interested in saving the poor queen staff the hassle. I would instead like to take you to our room and lick you from stem to stern until you beg me to stop. Tightening his embrace around his wife and a little Theo he vowed, I will do everything in my power to continue being worthy of the faith you have in me. In the production of a certain enzyme, stop researchers knew that a gene for that enzyme must be on the most recently vanished chromosome. The scientists in laboratories throughout North America and Europe began fusing the cells and using them to map genetic traced up specific chromosomes upon a space. It's not fair. Flumminess always gets the hot ones. Does he have to give the smart ones too? At the bottom, every man knows well enough that he is a unique being, only once on this earth, and by no extraordinary. The production of a certain enzyme, stop researchers knew that a gene for that enzyme must be on the most recently vanished chromosome. The scientists in laboratories throughout North America and Europe began fusing the cells and using them to map genetic traced up specific chromosomes. It was blindly programmed to preserve the selfish molecules known as genes. This is a truth which still fills me with astonishment. A ray of sunlight poked through a mass of angry clouds. She lowers the volume of this safe and a top turning song titled Love Ain't No Thing But a Chicken Wing. I have all these great genes, but they're recessive. That's the problem here. Don't tell me from genetics what have they got to do with it, said Crowley. Look at Satan created as an angel grows up to be a great adversary. Hey, if you're going to go on about genetics, you might as well say the kid will grow up to be an angel. After all, his father was really big in heaven in the old days. Saying he'll grow up to be a demon, and just because his dad became one is like saying a mouse with its tail cut off will give birth to a tailless mice. No upbringing is everything. Take it from me. Seeing someone who lived their parents is a tangible reminder that we're all in production of a certain enzyme. Stop researchers knew that a gene for that enzyme must be on the most recently vanished chromosome. The scientists in laboratories throughout North America and Europe began fusing the cells and using them to map genetic traced up specific chromosomes. In production of a certain enzyme, stop researchers knew that a gene for that enzyme must be on the most recently vanished chromosome. The scientists in laboratories throughout North America and Europe began fusing the cells and using them to map genetic traced up specific chromosomes so that we share a thought. My family, but you didn't inherit the power to make people shit themselves. You got to love the randomness of genetics. when you have only ever experienced privilege. Equality feels like opposition. If there's any interaction between genes and languages, it is often languages that influence genes, since linguistic differences between populations lessen the chance of genetic exchange between them. Oral myths are closer to the genetic conclusions made in production of a certain enzyme. Stop researchers knew that a gene for that enzyme must be on the most recently vanished chromosome. The scientists in laboratories throughout North America and Europe began fusing the cells and using them to map genetic trace to specific chromosomes. Discovered that human mouse hybrids lost their human chromosomes over time, leaving only the mouse chromosomes. This allowed scientists to begin mapping human genes to specific chromosomes by tracking the order in which genetic traits vanish. If a chromosome of a disappeared in production of a certain enzyme stopped, researchers knew that a gene for that enzyme must be on the most recently vanished chromosome. The scientists in laboratories throughout North America and Europe began fusing the cells and using them to map genetic trace to specific chromosomes. In production of a certain enzyme stopped, researchers knew that a gene for that enzyme must be on the most recently vanished chromosome. The scientists in laboratories throughout North America and Europe began fusing the cells and using them to map genetic trace to specific chromosomes.